Hello, 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 and I would like to say good afternoon. And for those of you watching this at night or in the evening or in the morning, welcome to Social Confoes. For everybody listening to this as well in the recording, thank you again for taking your time to have a social convo with me and Diego. What's up,
Hey, hey,
Diego?
hey, it's going good. You just asked me if I'm ready, and actually, I forgot my jacket. I wasn't ready, but who
Oh,
cares? We'll
okay,
just roll
okay.
with it.
Why do you need a jacket in the afternoon?
I don't, but it's for the look. I've had that jacket on
Ah,
consistently every show, but we'll make an
okay.
exception this
Okay,
time.
we'll make an exception.
We'll make an
So,
exception this time. It's part of the brand, and we will probably dive deep or touch on that in a bit with our guest.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure. So,
But
feel free
yeah,
to introduce him.
Yeah, anyway, so we're back to an afternoon episode, and today we have with us, he'll probably tell us a little bit more about this, but Ramiro. And we asked him how to introduce him. He just said Ramiro, branding like Madonna, and he'll tell us more about that in a bit. But he's the creator of the Story Legacy podcast, Story Legacy by Ramiro.me. And we'll probably dive into that. We actually met over I think a month ago. Funny story here, Shanuk. So we had an episode with John Olson on, the Hive blockchain and everything that. So a few days after that episode launched, I got an email from Ramiro telling, hey, he was really interested, checked out the stuff. And little did I know he was also in the scene, creating podcasts, creating content. And he told me, yeah, he's here in Suriname now. Um, Currently planning to move around a bit, but he'll tell us more about his story. But I don't want to divert too much into that. He did say we met like 6, 7 years ago, briefly at somewhere in Torarica, but I had no idea what he was talking about. But without further ado, Ramiro, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Diego. Hey, Jean-Luc.
So, welcome to the show. I have to say, Gregory is normally the sound guy, so he's gonna tell us how crisp your sound is because from what I hear, your sound is really, really crisp.
No, it's really bad because I'm like in an open space. I got birds on the background. Sometimes dogs be barking. So it is really, really bad. If you want to make it more sexy, then I can do this. But then for the video, it's not that sexy. You have this white thing in my face. But I bet it improves the audio quality or not. What, like with the white thing in my face, without the white thing in my face.
There is
So
a
yeah,
noticeable difference,
yeah,
but
right.
it's workable. It's workable.
Yeah.
It's at least you have a mic. And quick note there, Shanduk, that timestamp of Gregory was an hour ago when I scheduled this session. So he tuned
Oh,
into
really?
YouTube an hour ago, waiting for us. No worries, Greg. You'll probably tune in again in a second,
So
but
we
let
we
us
have
know.
that on Thursday. On Thursday, for the Lucky D show, we always have a couple of people that when it's scheduled into YouTube, they keep on commenting before the show actually starts, which kind of it puts like a little bit of a pressure on you, you know. But Ramiro, tell us a little bit more about you. You're the second person to put in the website as the name as well. So I think that's a really good sign because if you go to ramiro.me, we can actually book you for a session, right? So
Mhm.
maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your backstory, where you're from, and of course how come you're now in Suriname actually. So what's the relationship between you and Suriname?
So that is such a ironic question. I'm born and raised in Suriname. Now, Diego said a few things, right? In like that's part of the answer to why I just go by Ramiro. So one of the things when I meet people, so I look very Asian, and so people expect me to either be either Chinese or from the Philippines, depending on where you're at. And then I have a name like Ramiro, and they're like, but wait, that sounds so Spanish. And then they hear me speak Dutch with a Surinamese accent. And then they go like, but you're not black, you're not Indian, because like in Holland, people, if you're from Suriname, they either assume you're from African descent or from Indian descent, especially in The Hague. So that's got people wires all crossed up because they try to put you in a box, and but wait, you don't fit any of these boxes. So that's one thing on ethnicity and culture. Then to make things even more complex, with the long hair and I have a very developed feminine energy, people sometimes get confused. They go to me, they look, wait, are you a man or a woman? I start laughing. They say, oh no, I see you Adam's apple, you're a man. Then so that's the other. And then I speak about 6 languages. So yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. But I was born and raised in Suriname. My dad's side, grandma and grandpa from China, fresh off the boat, and my mom is from Colombia. So that is what they call in cultural studies. They call that cross culture kids. It's when you get exposed to 2 or more cultures, and then a different new culture arises that doesn't really fit in any of the 2. So that's a kind of a little intro. And to make things even more complex, I have lived in Holland for about 10 years. So I really learned to speak with a Dutch native accent, and my vocabulary has changed. So when I do that, people go like, well, wait, you sound Surinamese, but your vocabulary is weird. So the wires just get crossed. And how I learned English from Disney Channel and Cartoon Network. So I have a very American accent. I'm trying to put on a British accent. Some words get in with a British pronunciation, but then it gets into this new morph accent which you can't really play. So that's why people often assume that I'm from the US, but I have visited a bunch. I have some friends there, but yeah, that's a little intro backstory.
Oh, I love it, man. I really love it. So I'm now kind of in the decision making process whether we should continue on talking about the Colombian side or talk a little bit of Cartoon Network. Diego, are you also the Cartoon Network age or not?
Hmm, I've watched it every now and then when it came on, but I was more of a Nickelodeon kid.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
Cartoon Network was like insanely big here. I think late 90s as well. So what's your favorite Cartoon Network show? Do you remember? Like from back in the day, what was the favorite one?
Well, not Cartoon Network. My favorite anime was Dragon Ball Z with Goku in original Japanese, of course, you know. And from that, I watched it years later in my 20s. And the one Japanese word I learned from that series was otosa, because Gohan is always calling his father otosa, otosa. So that's what I learned. But Cartoon Networks, the ones that I remember are Ed and Eddie, Johnny Bravo, and you had Freakazoid, but that might have been Warner Brothers. So Johnny Bravo and
I
Ed
think
and
it
Eddie.
was on, yeah, I think it was on Cartoon Network as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to quickly transition in, because there's a lot of things that are fun about it, but what's the Colombian side of you? What's the thing that, like, I mean, the Asian, the Chinese Surinamese mix living in the Netherlands,
Yeah, that's
that I
pretty
think
common.
that's common, but the Colombian mix is like also kind of another side, which the Spanish comes in as well, of course. So what's kind of the thing that the Colombian side of you that's really like this I really love, where most Surinamese will be like, okay, so what's that exactly?
This is the irony. So in Suriname, there, at least when I grew up, there were very few of those combinations. Specifically, like Colombian, Asian. There were like 6 families or so. 6, very few. You basically knew all of them. And this is the thing. My mom, she has no family here. So my exposure to the culture of Colombians only through my mom. My Spanish isn't the best, so I speak Surinamese, Dutch, English fluent. And then comes like Spanish is like 80%. I still make a lot of mistakes. I speak Papiamentu, and then Mandarin's my worst. That's my worst.
How did you learn papiamento?
I had a girlfriend and I didn't even intend to learn Papiamento. It's just, there's some things in that language I just love to say. It just has this emotion to it. For example, sweetheart, you say douchey mommy. That douchey mommy. No worry, turta bong. It has that It's kind of that sing-songy flow from Brazilian Portuguese, and I love that. That's one thing, another language I want to add to the list, but I don't get a chance to practice Portuguese. So that's how I learned like certain bits and phrases. Oh, what does this mean? What does that mean? And at one point, I could just bam learn it. I didn't intend to learn it; it just happened one day.
Very, very interesting. Because Papiamento is from like Curacao, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, they speak it on the
Yeah,
islands,
the
Aruba,
islands.
Curacao, Bonaire, but they have slight variations in each one of them. Also, the spelling, like in Aruba, it's more sing-songy, and in Curacao, it's a little bit more fierce and more taka 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 taka. It's yeah, I'm not too well versed in it to really make that big distinction, the clear distinction, but there are some distinguished. And if you tell people from Curacao or Aruba that like it's the same, some people get no 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 no
No,
no
no, no,
no,
no, no.
we're not the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's with
Yeah,
every
that's true.
language, I guess.
That's
Every
true.
localization every place has its localization and its dialect and its personality. And as an outsider, you often take that for granted, and you don't know the nuances between them. So that's quite interesting in languages. But very interesting story of how um, the origins, but also moving to the Netherlands, living there, working there, and now you're back here for. We met up before, talked a bit what your plans are, but we actually have a viewer from Curacao here,
Really?
and yeah. Anil, and he says Papiamento has a base mostly in Portuguese. So, as you want to learn Portuguese, maybe that's a natural, segue into learning the language, having a front runner in Papiamento, and maybe, going both ways. But very interesting story, and I want to transition from the experiences you've had abroad here. Um, why are you actually back in Suriname now after having lived so long in the Netherlands? And yeah, what's the story where Ramiro is at currently? I've seen you do the podcast. I've seen you gone into content creation, and we'll talk about the content creation part a bit later. But what's the story here and now in Suriname?
All right, that's pretty simple and quick. But just to finish off Jean-Luc's question, that exposure to the Colombian culture, it was very limited. I've only visited Colombia like once. So in answer to your question, Diego, for next steps, that's one of the reasons why I want to visit and live in Colombia for 3 to 6 months to really get that Colombian accent. And still, the Colombian accent, you have different regions and it's still so diverse. So that is, I'm not sure yet when or how that will happen, but that's one of my next steps. I don't know when and where, but Colombia, definitely, I want to be 3 to 6 months. Now, on your question, why am I in Suriname? Well, I was in Holland. Holland wasn't my favorite place. There are other reasons for going there, and I even in the years that I lived there, I was pretty like sometimes half of the year, 3 to 6 months, I would be traveling. I'd be either in Suriname, a month in the States, or a few months on Aruba. I had some family there, or even just visit Curacao. So I'm always often traveling. Most bits, I don't really stay stationary in one point. Even in Holland, the past 8 years, I had moved 8 times. Like,
Whoa.
yeah, I lived in The Hague, 3 different locations. I lived in Leiden, 3 different locations. I lived in uh, Almere as well. So that is, yeah, it's a quality I have that I'm very. This goes into like the Asian 8 words fortune telling. Which element you are. So yeah, but well, that's not our sidetrack. Coming back to your question, why am I in Suriname? It's just clearing some energy. So another thing is I am clairvoyant and I am developing those clairvoyant skills. That basically means that you can see things and just get insights from that. It's intuition through seeing. That's what clairvoyance is basically means. And one of the things that I've really been into energy work and clairvoyant work in the past 2 years, I would say. And that's where I got certain clarity that there's some things unresolved of the past of my dad. My dad passed away in 2017, and losing people is always tough, and especially parents and stuff, people that close. And and that was such a mess with the whole inheritance thing. And there was it was such a headache to get everything arranged, from hospital things, from funeral things, from then the inheritance stuff. You don't have space to grieve. And it was in 2020, 3 years after, when I finally healed part of that grief. And for the first time, I cried up. I cried and teared up, because of my dad passing. And so that was a big healing in 2020 for me. Now, early this year, around January, I realized, that inheritance thing, I want to resolve it and move on. So that's why I came here to Suriname, to resolve that, clear that out before then. So then I have a clear slate, no baggage for moving on to the next place. And the next place, I don't mean the hereafter, I mean like Curacao. And so that's the main reason. And things in Suriname with COVID, things go so slow. I first thought, all right, it'll be 3, 6, maybe 8 months. The day I got here with all the whole lockdown, I was like, I need to take the whole 8 months to clear this all out. So yeah, that's what's up, and we'll see what happens. But no matter what, January, I'm going to the next place, because I have my tolerance of Surinamese customs and mindset, because mine has developed so much. I never really felt aligned with the local customs. I did adapt and adopt some of them, but they have since evolved. From all my exposure to U.S. culture, Asian culture, European Holland culture. So that's that's a little answer to your question.
Which of these cultures would you say has most impacted you in the way, and then specifically in the way you're thinking? Because you're very, articulate on, okay, by January I'm going to hear, and you're very able to make this snap decision, okay, time to move, especially with having to move so many times. Where does that come from, do you think?
That doesn't come from a specific culture in terms of ethnicity or geography or country. That, I believe, comes from a spiritual background. Now, what does that mean? Like, to me, spirituality, the focus of it is to discover purpose, be on purpose, be in purpose, live in purpose. But just more tangibly, like, we have the 3 bodies. We have the physical body, we have the energy body, and then we have the spirit body. Now, these things, how I see it, they shift. They keep on shifting. And they're in misalignment. And that's when we get frustrated. That's when we say we want to do something and we don't. We put it off, right? Now, having that clear alignment, when you have that intuition from the spirit body, going to the energy body, and then being connected, executing it in the physical body. That is what I believe that comes from being able to make a decision, to, having that intuition and then make a decision and then go into action. So intuition, decision, action. And I didn't always used to be like that. And I'm getting into that more and more. And that is exactly the reason why the podcast show that I started, within 1 week of intuition, it came into fruition within 1 week. And that was like super fast for me as well. So that's my little insight on that.
So I do want to jump into that, because I think it's a very particular skill to be able to do that. And what I always wonder is, especially in relationships, it could be like a marital status, but also just in relationships with friends, family, the people around you. To what extent uh, is it something that changes over time, that you shift from one style to another? Or is it something that basically you get caged into a relationship where you kind of make a compromise not to move as freely due to the fact that you want to spend more time with somebody else?
Let me see if I get your question right. So when you say move freely, you mean like move places?
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. That's another big reason why I am in Suriname right now. I had not seen my family, my mom, my brother, my niece for 2 years, and it was I had that need, that longing to see them. Now, when we talk about like a partnership in terms of romance and having that match when you want to be more adventurous and more flexible, and they have a different personality where they're more settled and grounded into one place and into one routine. I remember one someone once told me this, like, see, she said, she shared this with me, is that there are certain non-negotiables in terms of the relationship that has to work, otherwise it will be so difficult, and that is the place where you want to live, especially when you have an international expat community. And for example, living in Holland, you live in Amsterdam, and one is from Poland and the other one's from Spain. You get that cultural mix, right? But then where do we call home? Do we want to go back to Poland? Do we want to go back to Spain? Do we want to settle in Amsterdam and London? Where do we want to go? And that's one of the fundamental things to relationships, kind of like kids. Someone wants kids, the other doesn't want kid. That's like so fundamentally, if that is in misalignment, it's going pretty hard to make that work. So one is having that understanding, right? On But it all comes down to awareness, because most people don't even know what they want and what their preference is. Do I like to move? Do I want to live abroad? Do I want to always stay here? Some people are very clear, and others are just not aware. So that's one of the fundamentals, awareness. But then you come to a later phase. For example, when I have a cousin, right? They've been married for, I don't know, 10 plus years, but they're in their 50s and 60s. Now, it's a whole mix. One is really Surinamese, born local, has lived in Holland for 40 years now. The other is this whole other mix from Asian, Surinamese, but also lived in Holland for 40 years. So it's this other dynamics. But one wants to really move back to Suriname and spend the rest of the year here. Now, their kids are in Holland, so she wants to kind of go back and forth, but being able to make that decision. And at one phase, like the kids, they're all grown up, they're out of the house, so they're in a different phase in their relationship. So then, even if like and I see this with people who are 50 plus older and they have had that 30-40 year old relationship, where it's okay if they're living apart in another country for a few months, and then after 6 months you see each other again, because then you really learn to become yourself and be yourself also in the relationship, and give the other person space to be who they are and still have that commitment towards each other. So that's kind of my little insight and perspective on that at this point. But like, I don't have those 30-40 year
No, but
relationships, so yeah,
it's
I'm
very
talking from what
interesting.
I see, not from my own personal experience.
So I quickly want to jump into another segue of something you mentioned, because you mentioned like knowing what you want, and a lot of people don't know what they want. I think one of the issues that we often see in Suriname is that we get boxed in, so we think within our borders. And so, what advice would you give to somebody who has not been fortunate enough to study abroad, to live abroad, and they really want to figure out what they are about and what they want to do and what they actually enjoy? So, starting that process of finding your inner self, where would one start?
Yeah, you don't have to go abroad. It's actually that inner journey. And there are so many different spiritual practices, right? And one of the biggest things I believe is to just explore. One simple thing is, for example, even though we have a very diverse culture here in Suriname, people are still very segregated. They get exposed to different cultures, but only from their own circle, right? For only from their own ethnic group. What does not happen is in immersion. Ever since I was a little kid, one of my best friends, he has a like Indian background, and I was immersed. I was like a kid at their home, right? So I would learn certain customs, and that would influence me in a different way. And I also had other friends who had a mix of background from African, European descent mix, right? So, and also being a son at their home, I was also exposed to different family values. And I'm still learning and still, but the key is to explore, be it within or without, but also really get immersed and be open to be influenced. So that is just one example, practical example on how to really raise your awareness in just exploring and learning really what other people are like. Because you, of course, everybody knows someone from another ethnic culture, but how deep do they really know them, in the sense that how deep are they immersed in that culture? We know on the surface level, but we still judge it from an outside perspective. So I believe that's one of the key things. And nowadays, even when I nowadays we have internet, right? And it's fairly fast. There's so much, there's a whole world online you can access through, be it spirituality or any creativity. So that is not, the borders don't have to be a limitation. That's one. And my first exposure to that other culture was, again, Cartoon Network and Disney Channel. So that's very US centric. Oh, and Dragon Ball, you got the Japanese side as well. But even through that, and I was fortunate enough to have cable, but anyone who had a television, who had electricity, I mean, like, Goku was on channel 4 every day at 4. So there's no excuse. But the core fundamental thing is the willingness to grow and put yourself out there, to explore and be in scary, uncomfortable situations.
That brings me to, this is one of the reasons why I actually like Yes Theory, the guys from Yes Theory, Seek Discomfort. What you mentioned there, like looking for these uncomfortable situations, be it personal growth. I think that is something that's applicable for any type of growth. I think that the moment you go out of that comfort zone is the moment growth starts. And that is actually why I actually lost my train of thought there because of this comment from Gregory here. Bro is talking like he's the avatar. He loves it. So maybe the next hairdo would be an arrow on your head, people to recognize you. But yeah, coming back to that part of of growth, spiritual growth, and actually getting out of that comfort zone, it's very, yeah, interesting. And that's, I think, that a lot of people have problems with finding that, because that thought growing up in security, safety, and box limitations, kind of like societal boundaries, artificial boundaries that have been set by society, by the communities you grow up in, and not going out of the borders itself, but going out of that community would be another step already. Just moving to another neighborhood or something to make that even more a micro step would help tremendously. I think environment matters.
I agree. And, going outside of the borders, like Guyana and French Guyana aren't that far apart, right? And even Curacao, you don't need a visa to go to Curacao. Okay, you need money to buy the ticket. And nowadays, I don't know if you can swim there, but there are possibilities. The first thing is being open, making that decision, and then comes that faith and belief to really go and execute it. But basically, try shit out, make a decision, try shit out, learn from it, and that's how you grow. That's what I do.
So what's the most fun out of your comfort zone experience that you can remember? I know I'm throwing this off the bat. Diego, this is for you as well. The most discomfort that you seek that you can remember. I'm gonna think for myself as well if I remember.
There's so many. So the thing is, when people talk about, you have to go out of your comfort zone, right? Going out of, I don't even though I mentioned that, I don't focus on, I have to put myself outside of my comfort zone. I focus on, I want to explore, that curiosity. And that actually came from my mom. She taught me this one thing, and that is, everything you learn in life is yours to keep. And in Dutch, she says, alles dat je leert is meegenomen. And so I translated to that. Everything you learn in life is yours to keep. So learn everything. So growing up, I was first in sports. I would swim. I then did taekwondo. I did basketball. Then I did some kickboxing. Then I went some swimming again. And then I did some basketball. I did some ping pong. I even dabbled in volleyball. And I was learning also instruments like the keyboard, which I hated, the guitar, which I hated, and now I want to learn it. But it's the having that exposure to new experiences, and that comes from a place of curiosity that automatically puts you in a state of discomfort. And me being in discomfort is so natural to me. I'm almost always in a place of discomfort. So to narrow it down to one where that has been the most fascinating, I would say it's dancing. Because as a little kid, I was really insecure. I was an insecure, shy kid. And that started to change around the age of 11 when I went to, after elementary school, right, to middle school. That's when it started to change. And even during high school, I learned how to dance salsa. But sometimes you got some bad teachers and they don't really know what they do, so they don't really can instruct you. And one thing I did not know how to do was how to really lead a woman, right, in the dance. So I was so uncertain about that. And then later on, that was again back in 2017, like 10 years later, when I really started learning bachata and really taking that assertive role in leading in the men's position of the dance. That is one of the things that was, I would say right now, most uncomfortable that I can remember because of that insecurity I had back then.
Quick question before I answer for Shanluk from Devin here. If you're always in discomfort, so when you get back in the comfort zone, does it feel weird to you?
Yeah, well, no. Yes and no, because it's not always, because you go through cycles. I go through cycles. I'm usually in different areas. I'm in state of discomfort because I don't focus on learning in all areas at the same time, right? So for example, sometimes I'm really focused on, there was a time where I was really focused on health and the body and learning about that, being in it. And then you experiment with some things and then you reach a certain balance in that area. And then on content creation, I started actually back in 2010, 2012, somewhere like that, right? When you're new, that's another discomfort. And then you get into this place, right? All right, I got this right now. And then even within that, you reach a certain new level of, learning and skill. So, but then you get to these comfort levels when your skill, competence, and confidence increase. And so it is, yes, it can be a little bit weird, but it's always different phases where on the, I would say the homeostasis where it's in balance and that state of discomfort of growth. And even those phases have subcategories. So yeah, that's going into that for briefly. So you have balance, then you have when you really start to seek all the options that there are. Then it's about distinguishing which ones resonate with you, and then it's really about applying an integration. So even that discomfort can be in those three phases. Like we have balance, that's balance, comfort. And then we have seeking information, that can be uncomfortable. Sorting out the information can be uncomfortable. Integrating the information can be uncomfortable, but there's still nuances and differences to each phase.
So to follow up on that, I guess the first one or the most recent one that comes to mind for me, and to build on the stages, is acting on it. And one of my biggest, I was actually last year, discomforting moments was ditching my friends who I was in a road trip with, taking a car alone, driving halfway across the island, 400 kilometers alone, to meet someone I met on a beach 2 weeks ago and having no idea where they were, just the town. That was one of the best but most discomforting uh, situations I can recall in recent memory. Yeah.
So, personal question: was it a girl who you wanted to have like
Yes.
a romantic relationship with? All right, because
Oh yeah,
wow,
this is good stuff.
because that's like
Yeah,
one of the motivations to travel 400 kilometers in the unknown by yourself.
good one, Diego.
I
Yeah,
have a bunch of those as well. Yeah.
that's good. That's good. But can we ask if it was worth it, Diego?
It was worth it.
Awesome. No, I think Ramiro made a very good point. When it's like in your interest, when you're exploring, and you want to learn something, and you love learning that thing, it makes it so much easier. It doesn't feel really like discomfort because it's something you really want to do. And only when you look back at it, you realize, well, like, wait a minute, I celebrated my 19th birthday in China. You know, those kind of weird things that you don't realize. Like, wait, I did that, but it doesn't make sense at the moment because you're living in the moment, and only when you reflect back at it like 10 years later, like, wait, that was really really special. I should spend more time embracing that experience. So we quickly want to shift a little bit as well about storytelling and how storytelling plays a role in your life. So, can you tell us a little bit more, maybe also from a business perspective, like how companies or brands can use storytelling in a fun way that keeps it authentic, much like this conversation? I mean, if you would like fabricate everything and put all the questions on top of front, and then you get like a narrated show, so how can you use storytelling for companies without making it feel like we just want to be pretentious and tell you almost perfect story? So please like our product.
All right. To conclude on one thing of the previous section is you mentioned something when you come from a place of curiosity and exploration, and it gets it. You use different words. You have a different perspective. So it's not, oh, I want to go into an uncomfortable situation, and then I believe that makes all the distinction in your experience. So just final thought on that. Now, your question here on storytelling, how it fits into, you want to focus more on the brands, right? Well, there's actually something that is at the core that doesn't have to do with story at all. It has to, well, it still does, but it has to do with the identity and the intention of the company. So, for example, you have this term. This was in the 90s when you have this thing called corporate social responsibility. It's especially when Nike was one of the big ones, when they got a lot of bad media attention when light was shed on the sweatshop they had in Asia, right? So there was a lot of, we have to make this right. We have to do charity causes in order to have a better image in the public's eye, in the media. And then what happened? Companies don't care about sweatshops. They care about profit. They don't care about the little kids. They don't care about the good cause. They just care about their reputation. And that intention is which leads to what they call greenwashing. And so you have those corporate social responsibility activities, but it's just to have a good face in the media. And with the whole breast cancer support movement, they also call it pink washing because of the pink color of the breast cancer movement. And so they call it greenwashing, they call it blue washing, they call it greenwashing. And that applies to the same thing as storytelling. Because when a company does not really care, or the people in the company only care about the bottom line, do not care about their customers, their clients, their employees, then that will be reflected. So why do they want to adopt storytelling in their marketing and in their branding? Just to have more influence and more manipulation. When when that comes into the whole story, then you see right through that is just someone who wants to have a story because it's sexy and it's hip and it's a powerful tool for influence, that when they implement it there, it doesn't come from an authentic place. Then now we get into a whole other topic of business ethics and bottom line and capitalism and caring for the people you serve or not. So that's a whole another doorway, and that's like just the tip of the iceberg what my perspective is on your question.
I want to further elaborate on that because you also have a background in marketing before going the entrepreneurial, or I guess during your entrepreneurial journey as well. You've delved a bunch of years into marketing in the Netherlands, moving from place to place. And did that come before or during the storytelling? And what have you noticed or learned during that period in, corporate or modern day marketing that you now can translate or defer, so to say, into personal storytelling?
My storytelling started at that young age when I was insecure and shy. And I didn't realize I was learning storytelling. So around the age of 11, I met this friend. And this friend, you know those people when they talk, everybody's focused and listening. And they get everybody laughing and hanging on their every word, right? So I started hanging out with this guy and I started learning from him. The ironic thing is, when everybody was so mesmerized in his speak in his story, I would not be in it. I would be on a meta level looking at how he does it. So whenever the punchline comes, I go like, I'm analyzing and learning, so I don't laugh. And that bugged him because he was like that after school he started following me. His home is that direction. My home is in that direction. So he walked with me after school to my my place just because I was one of the few who would not laugh. And he kind of had this personal mission to make me laugh. But so from him I learned influence, and it's about communication, and storytelling is one of the core things. I would say it's like the fundamental, but I didn't see it as storytelling. Later, I learned, oh, the storytelling aspects of it. So that's kind of my background in that. And then my entrepreneurial background is my mom and dad, they were small business owners. So ever since age of 8, 9, 10, I was helping in the shop, supermarket. I remember like the vacation days, the Christmas breaks. I didn't have no vacation. I had to, other kids were out shooting off firecrackers. I was in the store selling firecrackers till 10, 11 p.m. Some might call it child labor. I'm grateful for that experience. But so I have that entrepreneurial background from that environment, and my whole family. I know so many people who are entrepreneurs. Here in Sermon is also often just small business owners who have just a lot of sales, not really like a company. But so that's kind of my background in that. And how I got into marketing was I was living in Suriname in 2010, and I said, you know what? I don't want to be dependent on the local economy. So I started looking for ways to make money online. And that's when I delved into video marketing, online marketing, email marketing, being authentic, connecting with people, and it's about the relationship and caring about them. The concept of reciprocity. This is what J. Abraham teaches, and those concepts. And then that's when I was exposed to like storytelling and how you can use that for connection and influence. But it was not that, and that was just an add-on to what I was already learning in terms of communication, rapport building, and presentation skills, sales skills. So I came to it from that perspective, and not from how can I be used, what other tools are there to be more manipulative in sales, for example. And that's one of the biggest complaints you have of people working in Holland. Now, I never worked in the corporate sector. I have friends who do and work in the government sector, and the pressure, especially the sales pressure that is put, it's just about targets, and they don't care about the customer, the clients, or the employees. That's how you get burnout. You get like coke addictions in order to have that physical energy in order to survive in that toxic environment. So we're going on to another rant right now, but
No, but it's good because that's I mean that's very. So do you see the similarity? I mean, when we talk about that toxic environment, if you look at the environment here, are there any comparisons like for the past months that you've been here, or do you feel like somewhat in Suriname it's a little different?
It is, but it depends on the company. So, for example, and again, I'm not in that corporate scene. I have friends who work there, right? But like a company like Digicel, right? They are international, so they have more of that corporate culture where it's more about punctuality and planning and systems. But when you look at government-owned companies, it's those, in economic models, those are the worst performing companies, the government-owned companies, and then it's more relaxed, the mañana mañana culture where it isn't that high pressure corporate environment. That's the extreme in the opposite direction where you don't have any standards, there's no planning. When are we gonna get internet at my neighborhood? Ooh, I don't know. It depends on the list. We have to go through it. I can't say, right? Those are simple things that you can plan in, but so that's the opposite direction. It's so very there's such a big variety here in Suriname because of that. Yeah, that culture of if it's government owned and things like that. So, and I'm not too familiar with the local corporate scene in Suriname, so I have very little insight on that.
Should we ask Gregory's question now, Diego?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, and then I think that we can wind down with some overrated, underrated.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun with Ramiro, I think. So, Ramiro,
Yeah.
one of the questions Gregory has for you is like, do you have any opinion on the get woke, go broke?
Okay, here's another thing. I am not up to date with the modern lingo and the hypes. So I know get woke. I don't know what go broke. Oh, so you mean you get woke, you go broke? Oh no, that's a whole nother topic. My perspective on that, yes, I do see a lot of people who focus on, oh no, it's all about the spirit and the energy and the physical things don't matter. I don't need money. I just need air. I live on air. So that is still, I see a misalignment between spirit, energy, and body, right? Because then they're so focused and living on that delusional dimension of it's all spirit, and they're not in the physical body. So that is my perspective on that. Is it is also common. That's the extreme in the other direction. I mean, most people too extreme on the body and not focus on the energy and the spirit level. And then when you get the woke on the spiritual only or the energy only level, they ignore that they need to have money to pay the bills and put food on the table. So that's my little insight on that.
I've actually heard of those. It's very odd to hear, yeah, living on air or photosynthesize. I've actually heard stories of this from online friends that they actually know people who do that. So quite interesting. But yeah,
I
Greg's
think
comment on
I
that.
think that
Get
Gregory, we
woke.
should get him back in the show to explain this
Yeah.
to us once
Well,
because
we'll come back to you,
it's
Greg.
not just Ramiro. Ramiro, it's not just you. Both Diego and I are like, okay, we're not that woke apparently because we don't know the phrase.
All right. But I think now it's time to go into something more lighthearted, some fun, quick answers. So we're going to ask you name a few topics. You tell us if you find it overrated, underrated, properly rated is also an option. And depending on your answer, we can elaborate a bit on it, why you think that is.
Okay.
But I'll kick it off with one. I think we could do three each, looking at the
Sounds
time. Yeah.
good. Do you want to go one by one one?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Let's start with your roots. A Surinamese passport, overrated or underrated?
Ooh, it is a good one.
Suriname passport. It's unpractical, underrated, overrated. Yeah. I'm still in the process of getting another passport, so overrated to have that pride of being having a Suriname passport. Overrated.
Okay. I'm gonna agree with the passport part, not on the pride part, but okay. um, owning your own house, overrated or underrated?
Depends on what you want. For me, it is overrated. Me traveling all the time, you can. What point is there to have a house where I only stay 1 to 3 months in the year? For someone who settles and they don't want to live anywhere else, it's pretty handy to have. But it's not always the most practical in economic and investment terms. So Depends. For me, it's overrated. For others, I think it's just the right thing to do.
All right, cool. Next one. Um, DuckDuckGo.
I love it. It's amazing. I use it all the time.
Could you explain to people, because most people don't know DuckDuckGo, and I find it very underrated as well, and I'm happy you share the same opinion. Could you explain to us why it is so overrated in your opinion? Underrated, I mean, in your opinion.
Well, what people don't understand about free services like Google and Facebook and Instagram is nothing is free. Like in Dutch, there's a saying, niet voor niets gaat de zon op. That means the sun doesn't shine for free, right? Even if you don't pay for Google or Facebook, someone else is paying, right? And who are paying? The companies that use their ad platform. Now, your value that you bring to the platform of Google and Facebook is your attention, and they sell your attention to the corporate companies to sell you more shit. Google and Facebook, for example, they know more about you than you do. So that is not as handy to have your whole profile. In my perspective, have everything on the Google platform so that they can manipulate you even more. So I still use some Google services, but to have it more diverse. And basically, what DuckDuckGo does is they use your data in an anonymous way so that it isn't to that level of manipulation potential as Google, for example. It's a private search engine. They do show you relevant ads based on your key search history, but they don't tie it to your identity, like your email or your Facebook profile or your address or your phone number. So it is much more anonymous data, which is actually less valuable for corporate companies who want to do advertising. So yeah, that's yeah.
Okay, next one. Uh, Having an academic degree.
Overrated. Overrated. Hello, overrated. All right. After graduating high school, I wanted to take a gap year. Here in Suriname, people don't know what a gap year is. They go like, what? No, if you go out of the study flow, you won't be able to get it back in. So I listened to my environment. I went to study aerospace engineering, hated it, wanted to come back, switched to automotive engineering, quit school, came back, went back, stayed in Suriname for 3 years, went back to Holland. It took me 6 years to finish a bachelor. I didn't even do it for me. I did it for the social acceptance for my mom. And so I was really resistant to academic degrees, and there's some validity to it. Like, the system is so old. The way they train you in the academic sector is to work in the academic sector, the skill sets, whilst 80% of the people will not go in the academic sector. So they acquire skills that are irrelevant to what they actually will do and what they actually want. But I will say as well that I am quite surprised in my last course, and actually each course, that I actually learned valuable things. For example, we talked about corporate social responsibility. I learned that in my academic career. We talked about the whole pinkwashing thing. We talked about cross-culture kids, right? That cross-culture generation. I learned about that in my academic career, and certain things, terms. So I was surprised that I actually learned some valuable things, but you can still learn those things without having the official accreditation of an academic career. So on the education, I would still say it's overrated.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna cheat with this one a bit. Content creation, and I want to segregate it into writing, audio, and video.
Ooh, I love this one. I love this one. Oh, you already know the answer, right? All right. So one is the thing is everybody's different, and everybody has their own medium and platform that they create better on, and they're more expressive. Me, writing, I hate writing. It took me 3 years to finish my thesis because of the whole writing process. So writing is not my forte. I'm very animated. I love video. But I have since discovered the audio only platforms. Audio only. And that's because of the current state of the culture and people's behavior. And that is, all right, reading. A lot of people don't read nowadays anymore. So, from the consumption point, so first I talked about the creation process, but then from the consumption part, a lot of people don't read. They watch videos, but they're so busy that they don't have time to sit down and watch a video, and they don't have it on the background just playing and listening to it because they want to sit down because they don't want to miss anything. But audio only, and when you optimize for audio only, people listen to it on the run, doing apps, in the car, in the shower, cooking, in the bedroom, everywhere they can consume audio only whilst they're living their life. So it doesn't intrude, it actually integrates. And then you get actually deeper on the whole psyche level because you're intertwined in their whole life, which, yeah, is another. Well, that's what I love because of the consumption behavior patterns of people today, is why I see audio only as heaven sent. Oh.
So to recap, the order would be most underrated audio, then video, then writing for you.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about the underrated. Audio is definitely underrated. Uh, Video is overrated, and I would say text is underrated because, in terms of consumption, because people don't want to always read, whilst it can be a very, very effective way of consuming and getting to the core if you have good writers, of course. So I would say, yeah, video overrated, text and audio underrated.
Nice. All right, let's finish it off with a final one. Travel, overrated or underrated?
Overrated. Why? Because like my even though I can move around a lot, I don't have to travel the world. I do it out of curiosity and not just to see the world and have a jet set lifestyle, right? And for me, that works. I can easily move from place to place. But other people, they love having their grounded, familiar environment. They don't have to travel and be a travel blogger, influencer, blah blah blah. And so for them, it's not sexy. It's not sexy to go to the jungle and see this unique hawk that you only have in Suriname. It's not sexy to them. I don't need to see that bird. I got birds in my backyard, right? So it's all depends. And why I say it's overrated because of the way the influencers try to market that travel lifestyle in those ads, in that branding of yeah, going to Bali and whatnot. And so the way it's presented, it's overrated because like going like take artists for example, where they have to do 3 shows in one day, Italy, France, London. That shit is tiring and draining energy, but that's travel, right? It looks sexy on the outside, but energy wise, no, man. Stay grounded, stay grounded. And I'm in between. I like to stay at places like 1 to 3 months, 6 months, but not like 1 week or 1 day hopping around all the place. So overrated.
Very good take on that one. Gregory enjoys the talk. He hopes you come back for another episode. And that's a good place to round it off. But as we round this off, can you tell us and the people listening as well a bit about Story Legacy with Ramiro, what that's about and where they can find that, and then we'll close it off.
Basically you can find it on all the audio only platforms. Just type in ramiro.me and you'll find it. My IG, the gram is also at ramiro.me. It's also my website. The website isn't optimized yet. I'm going to change that as well. But you can find me on those platforms, be it Spotify, Apple, Google, any podcast platform, ramiro.me. But the show is called Story Legacy at ramiro.me. And that is all about story. It's a show for people who want to tell their story, make an impact, and leave a legacy. It's about personal stories from people just like you who have gone through tough shit and came out with a story to tell. we dive into their personal stories and the life lessons learned from that. And I have a lot of guests come on the show to do that. I've got a season coming up in January. I'm gonna publish it. I'm already getting some musicians on. It'll be like a music focused season where I have musicians come on, talk about their story and their relationship with music and how the lessons they learned from that. And I also have my solo episodes where I share my personal experiences and insights on that show. And I'm also getting into more music, songwriting, poetry. So I'll also be dropping some verses, some lyrics, some rhymes on my solo episode. So that's what the show is about: story, insight, growth, and most important of all, just fun, baby. Because that spiritual growth shit, it can be traumatic, it can be heavy, it can be depressive. I believe you need to bring a certain play and lightness to it. So that is what I also intend to incorporate in the show.
Awesome. You can find him at ramiro.me. That's ramiro.me. And that intro that he just gave, you can re-listen to that word for word at every episode. I still find it fascinating how you recite that every single time.
That's what a true artist does, Diego.
Yeah, but thanks, Ramiro, for getting on. But I do have one final question.
Sure.
How'd you get Ramiro.me?
Ha! Just lucky, baby. You have to be first mover. Yeah, just lucky. You can't plan that shit. You're just lucky. Or there's still the Ramiro.com. It's an old guy. Well, I don't know how old he is, but he's not using it. He's actually sharing it with other people. And you can negotiate up your negotiation skill set level, and you can basically almost get any domain. I believe there's always a trade. So no matter what domain you want, you need to have the right exchange. So the right reason why they would want to sell it, why they want to give it to you, and how much they'll be compensated for that. If you want to get the Diego.com, for
Yeah,
example.
maybe the guy who owns Diego.com would love to own some Ethereum. Maybe Diego, you should try it. You should just try
I
it.
already looked for Diego.it is taken.
Yeah, I
But
also
yeah,
got lucky. I also got lucky.
appreciate it. Thanks for everybody tuning in, listening, asking the question, engaging with us. This episode might not make it Saturday, depending on if I make it. If not, it will make it on Monday. But I'm pushing forward to Saturday. I won't be available this week. That's why. Um, but yeah, with that being said, Shanluk, final words, roll us out. And then,
Yes, just to add on to what Diego just mentioned, we might continue with the afternoon sessions. It's fun, the interaction is there. So we might continue to do our switches around for the next month and a half. That's just for your info. Thank you again, Ramiro, Diego, as always, our viewers, the people that watched in, and also some fun comments. Thank you for joining in, Shireen and Anil as
Shireen,
well.
Anil.
Yes, thank you again. This was Social Confoes, and see you next week. Bye bye.
Ciao.